You thought death was always tragic and serious? Well, not these ones. Have you ever imagined dying because of a turtle? Not from a bite, not from drowning, but from a turtle shell falling from the sky and hitting you in the head? Sounds ridiculous, right? But this is a 100% real story, the death of Aeschylus, one of ancient Greece's most famous playwrights. And let me tell you, his ending was more dramatic than anything he ever wrote. Aeschylus lived around 500 BC and is known as the father of Greek tragedy, writing plays about war, gods, fate, and you guessed it, prophecy. And prophecy is exactly where this gets weird. According to ancient sources, Aeschylus once received an ominous prophecy. You will die from a blow to the head, from something falling from above. Freaked out, he did what any logical man would do. He moved to the countryside. No roofs, no trees, nothing above his head except clouds and seagulls. He thought, if there's nothing up there, nothing can fall on me. But he forgot one thing: eagles. One sunny day, an eagle was flying overhead, carrying a turtle in its claws. To crack the shell open, the eagle needed a rock, so it looked down and thought, perfect, that guy's bald head looks flat enough. The eagle dropped the turtle, and it hit Aeschylus square in the skull. Boom. Instant death by falling turtle. The irony? One of Aeschylus's most famous plays is literally about death from the heavens. They say fate can't be avoided, especially when it's flying and hungry for turtle soup. Have you ever laughed so hard your stomach hurt? Maybe cried from laughing? That's cute. Chrysippus? He laughed so hard, he died, and this is 100% true. Let's rewind to ancient Greece around the 3rd century BC. In Athens lived a philosopher named Chrysippus, a man of serious thoughts, deep logic, and very little time for nonsense. He was basically the don't talk to me until I've solved the meaning of life type of guy. Until a donkey took him down. Not by kicking him, not by biting, but by eating figs. Yes. It happened like this. Chrysippus was out walking in his garden when he saw a donkey munching on some ripe figs that had been left in a basket. And for some reason, he thought it was hilarious. Whether it was the way the donkey chewed, or maybe he'd had a bit too much wine that day, he burst into unstoppable laughter. And then he made it worse. He pointed and shouted, "Ha ha ha! Give him some wine to wash it down!" And that's when it happened. He collapsed. Dead. Heart failure. From laughing at a donkey, eating figs. This wasn't some random man. This was Chrysippus, the guy who wrote over 700 philosophical works. And he went down because of a snack-happy donkey. To this day, he's remembered as the first documented case of death by laughter in history. And the moral of the story? Laugh all you want. Just be careful around figs and donkeys. So you like gold? Then eat it. Let me tell you one of the richest deaths in human history, and I mean that literally. Meet Marcus Licinius Crassus Rome's real estate mogul, warlord, and possibly the richest man in the ancient world. This guy wasn't just rich, he was I own, the firefighter's rich. Yep, in ancient Rome, if your house caught on fire, Crassus would send his private fire brigade, but only if you agreed to sell him your house at a discount. Absolute capitalist legend. But then he got greedy. In 53 BC, Crassus marched to war against Parthia, modern-day Iran, dreaming of gold, glory, and maybe a few extra villas. Spoiler, it did not go well. He walked straight into an ambush, most of his army was wiped out, and he was captured alive. And this is where the story turns golden. The Parthian general looked at Crassus and said, "You love gold so much? He didn't wait for an answer. They melted gold and poured it into Crassus's mouth. Yep, his final snack was liquid fortune. Historians still argue the exact details, but the message was clear. So you like gold? Then eat it. And the moral of the story? Money can't buy happiness, and it definitely shouldn't be swallowed molten. You've heard people say, "Wow, that acting was so real." But what if an actor actually dies on stage and the audience just claps because they think it's part of the show? Sounds fake? It's not. Let me tell you about the most tragically convincing performance in theater history. The year was 1958 in the UK. The BBC was broadcasting a live play called Underground. One of the lead actors, Gareth Jones, 33 years old, was known for his intense acting skills, the kind of guy who could cry on cue or fake a heart attack like a pro. And in this play, that's exactly what he had to do. His character was supposed to have a heart attack in a subway tunnel. So, the scene comes. Gareth starts trembling, grabs his chest, and collapses dramatically. The audience? Applause. His fellow actors? Keep going. The director? Brilliant! What commitment! Except, it wasn't acting. Gareth had suffered a real brain aneurysm, a sudden and fatal one. He died right there on stage, live, in front of the camera. It took nearly 5 minutes for someone to realize it wasn't part of the play. A fellow actor leaned down and whispered, "Hey, it's your line." No response. That's when it hit them. The show was stopped. Viewers at home were confused. One even said, "Bold ending. Didn't expect that plot twist." And that's how Gareth Jones became the only actor in history to literally die in character on live television. He wasn't just in the moment. He became the moment. You've heard of execution by hanging, guillotine, or lethal injection. But what about death by elephant? Sounds like a joke, right? But no, it was a very real method of execution in medieval India. And no, it wasn't quick. It was a public performance. Let's rewind. There was a corrupt finance official, let's call him Mr. Patel, caught stealing from the royal treasury. The king was furious. The people were outraged. So the sentence? Death by trained war elephant. This wasn't just any elephant. This was a royal execution elephant, specially trained to kill slowly. Yes, you heard that right. slowly. Picture this. The town square is packed. People are whispering. Kids are climbing on shoulders. The elephant walks out like a gladiator. It gently steps on the man's foot, then his hand. Just enough pressure to say, "See what I could do to you?" Some elephants were trained to rip limbs off or even throw the person into the air before the final stomp. But here's the plot twist. If the king saw enough suffering and decided the man had learned his lesson, he could wave his hand and the elephant would stop. Yes, the elephant could take orders mid-kill. Mr. Patel, sadly, did not get that royal mercy. One final stomp, squish, and boom. Gone. A man obsessed with gold. Flattened by an elephant trained in moral lessons. Not the most heroic death. But hey, definitely one of history's most epic ones. Have you ever been so curious you tasted chemicals? No? Good. But one man did. Not once, all the time. Meet Carl Wilhelm Scheele, an 18th century Swedish chemist, the guy who discovered oxygen, chlorine, manganese, molybdenum, and his own death. Scheele was a genius, but also a bit insane. Back then, there were no lab safety rules, no gloves, no warning labels. So how did he test the toxicity of a new substance? He tasted it. Yes, he tasted everything. Sulfuric acid? mercury compounds, arsenic, hydrogen cyanide, and then he'd write in his journal, slightly sour, tingling throat, mild tongue numbness, interesting flavor. Seriously, Carl? He worked in a closed lab, touched everything with bare hands, and washed up using the chemicals he just invented. In 1786, he suddenly died at the age of 43. No one could tell which chemical actually killed him because he had tasted so many. Historians now refer to it as death by collective poisoning. And thus, Scheele became the patron saint of every chemistry student who ever thought, what if I just licked this? Ever looked at flight prices and thought, there's no way I'm paying that. Well, this guy took it to the next level. He literally mailed himself across the world. This is the 100% true story of Brian Robson, a young British man living in Australia in the 1960s. Brian had signed up for a work exchange program, but after a while, he got homesick and wanted to go back to the UK. One small problem? A plane ticket back then cost more than 3 months of his entire salary. So what did he do? With the help of 2 buddies, Brian decided to ship himself home in a wooden box. The plan? Fold himself up in a tiny crate with a pillow, flashlight, water bottle, and a homemade air pipe. Label the box, fragile, this side up, Mackin parts. Shipping time, estimated 36 hours. Now here's where it goes full comedy. Instead of being flown straight to London, Brian's box got rerouted to Los Angeles and sat in a warehouse for nearly 5 days. Inside the box, Brian passed out from lack of air. No one knew he was there. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even knock. Luckily, an airport worker finally opened the crate, and surprise! There was a half-dead guy inside, clutching a flashlight and a soggy water bottle. Brian survived, barely. His story made international headlines. But get this. The Australian government didn't even prosecute him because there were literally no laws against mailing yourself at the time. Today, Brian's story is legendary, a mix of stupidity, guts, and innovative travel budgeting. And if you're thinking, nobody else would ever try this, just know, at least 3 more people did. Not all of them were as lucky.